Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. We're going to talk probably about four interesting plants today from my Spring Foraging Cookbook and from the Medicinal Shrubs book. They're all, well, three of them at least are short entries, so that'll be good. One thing I wanted to mention though at the outset of the show, well actually two things. First of all, happy Easter. I hope everyone's having a very happy Easter, and it's a beautiful day here. It really feels like Easter. It's very nice. One thing that's not nice though, this is going to fall under the category of don't try this at home. Okay, as many of y'all know, I haven't really been able to be in my home since the hurricane last year. I'm gonna, God willing, hopefully get some people in there to help me do some work and get the place back to being livable, i.e. water and electricity back on, very soon. So we had to get through the winter. You know, you can't do much in the mountains in the winter time, and now it's spring. And of course, I absolutely want to be home in the spring. It's time to go out and harvest ramps and fish for trout and do all the kinds of things I love to do. So say a prayer for me because it's going to take a lot just to get some basics done. It's going to take a lot. So anyway, being away from home, I don't have access to a lot of herbs, and I don't really know like local, I guess you'd say, well, physicians or whatever, service providers, however you want to look at it. And what I have encountered down here, I'm not going to say exactly where, very, very poor quality of service, very poor quality of work, and ridiculously high prices. Like they'll do the worst job you can think of and charge you 3 times more than you could expect. So a few weeks ago, I've only had one filling in my entire life, and it was when I was like, I don't even know, 7, 8 years old, and there was absolutely no way I could have had a cavity in this tooth at the time. I think the dentist was basically just trying to rip us off, rip my mother off, and he spent days drilling out one of my molars and filling it, and did a very poor job. He basically hollowed out the entire tooth. So it lasted 30 years, I guess, but a few weeks ago the filling fell out. And I thought, well, I'll get home and I'll go to a dentist. I actually know this guy, and he'll do a good job, because his reputation matters in the small community. You don't have to worry about such as that, and they charge you a fair price and everything. And then a couple of nights ago, I was eating, and I bit into something hard, and the tooth basically broke in half. Well, I was already having some really bad sinus pressure from all the pollen this year. And when I was working on my truck, I really, I cracked a rib and strained some muscles. And with that triple combo, I ended up yesterday with my jaw basically swelling up, almost locking, the tooth throbbing like crazy, nerve pain in the face. I mean, it's one of the most painful things you can deal with. Is what they call, I guess, facial neuralgia, and my neck. just completely knotted up way down to my shoulder, and the ribs actually pretty much healed up, but the muscles were still inflamed. And so I was in agonizing pain yesterday, and I mean nothing I could do. I tried, putting biting into a clove in the area where the tooth was cracked. Didn't really help. It was too extreme. Too much of it was in the muscles as just opposed to the dentin of the tooth. Took aspirin, had a little too much vodka, that's for sure, trying to numb that thing out, and that didn't really help either. Did let me get a little nap in, which is good because I didn't sleep at all the night before because of the pain. Well, not much, get a little bit. And then I remembered, okay, so down here where I've been staying recently, there's tons of gelsemium. I know we talked just about this gelsemium before, and we'll discuss it again, actually, in the Medicinal Shrubs and Woody Vines book. It is a very powerful painkiller and a very dangerous plant. And I remembered that if you don't have a tincture of it, what you do is you use the root hairs. You find it, you dig it up, take the root, and just little hairs coming off of there. It's essentially the same effect as morphine, and very, very dangerous. Too much will kill you. I mean, you will overdose on it just like you would an opiate. There's like really no modern information on dosaging. I had to go back to like King's Medical Dispensatory and Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests, books from the 1800s that I reference on the show a lot. But it's a really good example of why this show is valuable because I had that knowledge at hand. I went and pulled up about a 2-inch section of root, and it had some hairs coming off of it. I took just a couple little ones, held them in my mouth, chewed them on the other side of my mouth, and immediately the pain began to decrease. It was not intoxicating. It did not, when you're in serious pain and you take an opiate, you don't get any intoxication from it. It just helps with the pain. And so every hour to 3 hours, I would get a little root here and chew on it. And by the time I went to bed, the pain had really decreased in my muscles and my jaw had relaxed. I had to use just over-the-counter nasal spray for the sinus pressure. But it became tolerable. I was actually able to eat supper and go to bed and sleep. And when I got up today, the tooth still hurting, everything else pretty much back to normal. So that falls very much under the category of don't try this at home. You do not want to take experiments, take risks like I do. I'm an herbalist friend of mine said that I was like sort of the old Thompsonians and eclectics. I'm willing to take risks and experiment to learn about a potential medicinal herb that could have toxicity. And this is one of the most dangerous herbs I know of, but it worked. So, what am I saying? 1, don't be reckless and do what I did. But 2, you may want to study gelsemium, also known as Carolina jessamine. It's the state flower of South Carolina. Beautiful vine. It will spread. It will take over. I have some growing in pots that I started last year after the hurricane. I thought, I might be down here. Good idea to go ahead and harvest, get some of this started so I can transplant it when I get back home. And it actually worked really well. The minute you put the root in your mouth and kind of bite into it a little bit, the root hair again, this is like the tiniest little doses you can imagine, that it is extremely narcotic because it has that bitter narcotic taste to it. And, it really did a good job. It really did. So that's what I'm going to keep on hand. I'm not recommending it to anybody, but if you ever wonder why I cite all these historical references, what pharmacists and botanists were writing about in the 17 and 1800s and even long before that, you never know where you're going to be, and you're going to need an herb, and you might not have access to anything you're familiar with. Yesterday I could not have done a podcast. My jaw was swollen up. My speech wasn't clear. Today I'm, unless I'm chewing on something and really bite into that tooth, it's nothing more than just a dull ache at most, and most of the day it hasn't bothered me at all. And as soon as I get back up to home, I'm probably just going to go have it pulled because the guy just ruined the tooth. He drilled it out, just hollowed it completely, and I didn't know that until it broke. And I basically have like no tooth left, And so hopefully there's enough that can be pulled without leaving part of the root in there. I don't wish to have surgery to get it out. I really hope that doesn't happen. So say a prayer about that. And then, I'll either just be without one tooth, one molar. I can live with that, or maybe get a bridge or an implant at some point down the road. But my experience with dentists has not been good. It really has not. I know one guy that I would trust to go to, and I'm waiting to get home to that person. But I mean, I was in like debilitating, agonizing pain yesterday, so I took an extremely risky measure, and it paid off. So another reason why it's good to know about a lot of herbs that most people don't discuss or talk about. And that's Gelsemium is certainly an herb that 99% of herbalists have never even heard of. Most would not use. If they use it at all, it's in a homeopathic formula. And actually, that homeopathic formula is used for pain of the facial nerves. So it must have an effect specifically, or especially, I should say, but not specifically, on the facial nerves. So, that was good. I always say, it's like George Herder said, my hero George Leonard Herder, who wrote The Bull Cook and all kinds of weird, great, wonderful books in the 40s and 50s. People starve not for a lack of food, but for lack of knowledge. And I believe firmly that God gave us everything we need wherever we are. We just have to learn those plants and how to use them. And this is one case where that was absolutely the truth. So now let's get into the herbs for the day. And you may notice I am very tired. I haven't slept great the past 3-4 days. But we'll start with, I'm not complaining. Tired is much better alternative than in like excruciating, like almost blacking out type pain. Actually, I was pretty close to blacking out a couple of times. So we'll start with a real short entry from the Spring Foraging Guide. And it's valerian, but it's not the valerian we use as a medicinal herb. It's Valerian edulis, Edulis. This is an edible variety of valerian, and it's actually been cultivated for the garden. It's very different than our normal valerian, which is a strong sedative, the root of which smells like cat pee. It has an ammonia smell. This plant has edible roots and can be prepared just like potatoes or Jerusalem artichokes. And the variety grown in Europe is used as a salad green or pot herb. It's not native to my region. I haven't tried it. I'm looking forward to getting some growing in the garden soon. I think they call it lamb's lettuce, if I'm not mistaken. So that's on the list to try in the garden. But the wild one, the American Valeriana edulis, has a good tuberous root. And I don't often find it, haven't used it a lot, but it's one to know because the roots of plants always are essential in a survival situation because they give you starches and energy. We get a lot of vitamins and such from greens, from pot herbs, which, I love, and a lot of good flavor, but they don't have a lot of calories. You really can't live on greens. If you don't incorporate some of the roots into your diet, some of the nuts into your diet, and some fish and game, if you were in, or even bugs, honestly, grubs and such, I mean, if you were in a survival situation, you would become very weak. In fact, there's a really great, I don't watch a lot of the survival type stuff, the stuff on TV, Alone or Naked and Afraid. I can't stand that stuff. I like to see like an actual woodsman go out and into the wilderness and survive, using primitive skills and a lot of the stuff that I like to do. And really one of my favorites, let me see what his name is. I can get it to his YouTube channel. His last name is Ovens. Let me see, is it Greg Ovens? Anyway, he and, I'm looking it up, I'll tell you about it. He and another survivalist type guy, oh, here we go, yeah. Greg Ovens, yeah. Ovens Rocky Mountain Bushcraft. He's got a ton of videos up on YouTube. I think he's up to I don't even know. He's been doing this for almost 10 years now. But if you go back to the beginning of his channel, to the earliest videos, probably no more than 3 or 4 days in, or videos in, he does this, excuse me, an outdoor challenge. 30 days, he and this guy go up into the Rocky Mountains and basically just live off the land. Okay, they take minimal camping gear. They took some salt, they took some coffee, and some fishing equipment. And he's an expert forager, and you actually learn a lot about identifying wild plants and how to eat them, and cook them and eat them. Enjoy them watching his show. Really like Greg Ovens. He's a very, very down to earth, cool guy. Very different than a lot of these folks that you see. Um, but they had tons of lake trout, brook trout, and rainbow trout, but nice, good size, kind of, oh gosh, I mean, every one of these fish was probably 3 pounds, and they were catching a couple of them a day, and that was their protein they lived on. Plus, they hunted a little bit for, what was it, maybe not groundhogs, gophers, something like that, something of that family. But they kept getting weaker and weaker, even though they were eating large meals of trout and wild greens. And then sometimes they found some spring onions, sometimes they found a couple of little wild strawberries, but they're very much the kind of stuff I eat in the woods. And Greg kept saying it was because of overexertion. They were just working so hard, hiking so much. But you could see them losing weight and kind of deteriorating and getting weaker and weaker every day. They made it to 30 days and built some really cool stuff. These treehouse things they built because they were in grizzly bear country. They actually had a legitimate need to get up out of the bear and the moose. There were a lot of moose in that area, which are actually often more dangerous than bears. But anyway, it's really cool. I highly recommend Greg Ovens and the other guy, I can't remember his name, that went out with him. He has his own channel. Both of them are really cool, and they're not flashy, and they're not, dramatic. They're not like, zombie apocalypse type folks. They're folks that like to do what I do, which is just kind of go out in the woods and spend time there and be with nature and eat wild food. But anyway, the reason they were deteriorating their diet, they had no fats. Now, you heard me say they had these nice big trout out of these Rocky Mountain lakes and good cold water. That trout on its own should have had plenty of fat. But for some reason, they didn't bring a frying pan. They would take a big flat rock and put it in the fire and cook the fish on the rock, or put a stick through it and put it over the coals, and all the fat was dripping into the fire. They were eating lean fish, and those gophers or whatever they were eating had like no fat whatsoever. You can easily die of lack of fat. If you don't have a lot of tree nuts, which have natural, vegetable fat, you got to have the fat from the fish and the game. There were a lot of our ancestors that went across the prairies. They tried to live on jackrabbits. Jackrabbits have no fat. They would actually die. They would die before they made it to their new homestead because they didn't have enough fat in their diet. I really, I sent Greg kind of a chastising email, or message saying, I really love your show and all this, but the reason you guys were so weak and tired and could barely walk by the end of the 30 days is because you didn't have fat. Now, some carbs would be good too. And as far as I'm concerned, if you can carry in a pound of coffee, you can carry in some salt, a pound of salt. You can carry in a quart of cooking oil or a pound of lard. You can carry in a little cornmeal. And as long as you have some cornmeal and fat and salt, you can survive just about anything. I mean, just cooking the fish in the pan would have saved some of the natural fat from the fish. That right there would have been probably giving them 20% more calories per day and far more energy. But and you also, when you don't have the fats, you start getting brain fog. You're not thinking as clearly. But taking that fish, and instead of just cooking it with just plain salt on a rock, take it, dredge it in a little cornmeal that has some salt mixed into it, fry it in a little oil. You're going to get some more calories and fat from the cooking oil. You're going to get calories from the carbohydrate of the cornmeal or flour, but I prefer cornmeal, especially for this next reason. And when you need some extra energy and maybe you don't have enough food, make cornbread, fried cornbread. All you got to do is take your cornmeal, mix it with water and salt, make a little bit of a thick slurry, put some oil in a pan, and fry it. You can definitely put some wild onions in there, make it even better. I grew up on fried cornbread. a piece of fried cornbread probably has about 100 calories. And that's calories from a slow burning carbohydrate, cornmeal, and that's calories from the oil it was cooked in, and anything else you might add to it, like some wild onions or something. Uh, I would never, ever go into the woods for any period of time without taking some oil, cornmeal. Of course, I would also, like I said, if you can bring in coffee, why not bring in a couple pounds of rice or some lentils? If I've got those five items essentially, and I mean, coffee is optional. I mean, usually when I go out camping or backpacking, I take tea. Tea's lighter, and that lightness allows me to carry a little cylinder of sugar. And if you need an extra boost of energy, if it's been a hard day, hot cup of tea with a little sugar in it. But it's also really good for trauma and shock when you go through anything difficult in the wilderness. If you get a hot cup of tea with a couple of spoonfuls of sugar in it, it can make all the difference in the world. It can almost be a lifesaver. So for me, when I go to the woods, salt is always the top priority because you can't live without salt. Next comes fat because you can't live without fat. So I'm going to have salt, either a quart of cooking oil or a pound of lard, and maybe both. It just depends on where I'm going, how long I'm going, right? For the first few nights, I'm going to take a pound of bacon with me. So, that's definitely going. So, bacon keeps well off refrigeration. Our ancestors carried several pounds of bacon with them every time they went into the woods. Again, you can use it as fat to cook in. It seasons the food. It's great in survival situations. I'm going to take a couple cans of sardines. I am not going to the woods without a couple of cans of sardines. But beyond that, at least a pound or two of rice, pound or so of lentils, and some cornmeal. So I guess that's 8 items. Oh, and a small, like, half cup of sugar, in just a little canister. And I like to bring some black pepper, some Tony Chachere's, just keep the flavors interesting. And they brought, adobo, the Filipino adobo seasoning. If they could bring a little canister of adobo, I don't see why they couldn't have brought a little bit of lard or cornmeal or something. And it just made no sense to me whatsoever. But always remember that. In any time you're in the woods, if you're foraging, especially if you're in a survival situation, prioritize salt and fat, protein and carbohydrate. Your greens are great. They're going to give you vitamins. They're not going to keep you going. And if you try to live on a no-fat or low-fat diet and nothing but greens, you're probably not going to make it very long at all. Had they not gotten some fat out of those fish, I don't think they would have made it. And for some reason, Greg doesn't like fish roe, trout roe. And I mean, you got tons of cholesterol in those fish eggs, and it's a true delicacy. And it just blows my mind that somebody would not, in a survival situation, prioritize fish roe. Without a doubt, you need the fat. Yeah, it makes all the difference. It really does. And a lot of times I see people going out on the Appalachian Trail, or they're, just hiking in the woods. They're backpacking, and you look at what they brought. It's freeze dried this and freeze dried that, and granola bars, and it's like all they've got. I mean, maybe some beef jerky. There's just no fat in it. There's salt, there's sugar, there's carbs, maybe a little protein, and you need to be in any survival situation, prioritize fat and protein. Fat and protein, then carbs. Okay, so you're looking at bringing in the fat or making use of wild food, wild meats and fish, in a way that keeps that fat, utilizes that fat. I mean, take a couple of snares, try to trap a beaver, or whatever, try a raccoon. They're fatty, even if the fat on the beaver, the fat on the beaver is nice and clean. But on a raccoon, it might be a little gamey. Still, it can keep you alive. It can keep you alive. Back in the 1800s, people would actually have candles made out of beef tallow. And whenever they went into the wilderness, whenever they traveled, they would use those beef tallow candles because beef tallow is beef fat. And in a survival situation, they'd eat the candle. They knew they needed the fat. Native Americans made pemmican. Pemmican is like a combination of lots of fat, usually rendered bear lard, with dried meat, like beef jerky, it would usually be dried deer or bear meat, and nuts and berries. So you're getting lots of fat, some protein, and some carbohydrates. Uh, you know, I don't know how we've gotten really so stupid in modern life that we don't understand that fat, your entire brain is made of fat. As soon as you start cutting fats from your diet, you start losing mental clarity. Your hormones are made out of fat. If you're going to go to the woods and cut trees and build stuff, and you got to have some testosterone. You need fat to support that testosterone. If you're going to think your way through survival situations, you need a brain that's working properly. And in the woods, you certainly can't count on having enough sleep every night. You can't, you're going to be in bad weather conditions. You're going to get sunburned one day. You're going to get rained out the next. You're going to get snowed on. You're going to be fighting off hypothermia. Even in 50-degree weather, if you get soaked through, you can experience hypothermia. Again, that fat is what's going to keep you alive. So never underestimate fat. So back to our spring foraging cookbook. Well, let me see what time it is. Maybe I'll save this one for next week and I'll go on to the shrubs. Yeah, we're up to 24 minutes. Let's go on to shrubs, and because the next one is sort of a long entry, it'll be good for next week. No, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it. Heck, you don't mind listening to me for another 10 minutes. I know you don't. I hope you don't anyway. So violets. All members of the violet family are edible, delicious, and medicinal. And we've talked about them before, they're medicinal herbs. However, the plant known as African violet is not a true violet. It is toxic. Even the ornamental flower that's known as Johnny Jump Up, and sometimes called a pansy, although a true pansy is a different plant, is just as useful as the tiny but beautiful wood violet that grows all around my house. The only warning I can think of is that violets contain salicin, which is like aspirin, so perhaps don't consume in very large amounts, especially if you're taking prescription blood thinners. Regardless, I eat them regularly. Add fresh leaves to salads. The flowers are very nice candied, or you can store them in sugar, and you have this nice violet flavored sugar, and you have the candied blossoms that you can put on any dessert or just snack on. They're really nice. They lend a really nice aroma to the sugar, and you can just absolutely eat them like candy. The sugar will pull the moisture out of the violet, and it candies it as it does that. Let's see. And a lot of people, yeah, they use candied violets to decorate cakes, like wedding cakes and such. Real long tradition doing that. Without the sugar, violet flowers are an excellent flavor for wine, and you could make a violet wine if you had enough violet flowers. They can also be tossed in a salad, used in soups. Very nice edible garnish for most any dish. There's just something about a few violet flowers and maybe a pinch of chives that makes any dish look gourmet. I don't care what it is. Take a piece of baked chicken and throw a couple of violet flowers and a little fresh chive cut across the top, and people will be like, ooh, this is nice. And it is nice. It really does dress things up. Another excellent use is to add violet flowers and wild strawberries to vanilla ice cream, and it's really good. And try it. You will thank me later. Yeah, I don't have a big sweet tooth, but homemade vanilla ice cream, especially with something like violet flowers and wild strawberries, woohoo, yeah. And by the way, don't buy vanilla extract from the store. You can go on eBay and get 3-4 Madagascar or Mexican vanilla beans for like $5. Put them in a pint jar, pour some vodka over it. You can do 1 bean per jar, and you've got a pint. In about 30 days, you've got a pint of the best vanilla extract you're going to get. So for like an investment of what? A bottle of vodka, so $10. You got a $10 investment. You could make 2 quarts of fine vanilla extract. Real stuff. So anyway, use that. That's just an aside. Then, you can take the bean out, you can split it, you can scrape out the seeds and put them in your vanilla ice cream, and it's so good. That's what made me think of it. But anyway, violets can be used to flavor anything from honey to vinegar. And if you have enough, you could even make violet jelly, and that is a real treat. Use the blossoms, make a syrup out of it, same as I described for making dandelion syrup, and then add a little pectin and make a jelly. It's just really nice. If you do make a jelly, it can be an excellent sauce for pork, chicken, or game. And I'm telling you, violet, you may think sweet and floral, how's it going to work? No, it works, okay? Because you don't make it that sweet, and you add some lemon juice, and you keep it a little tart. So start by browning or caramelizing the alliums of your choice, onions, ramps, leeks, shallots, whatever you got, and whatever mushrooms you like. This is not going to be a real sweet dish. This is going to be more savory, but those caramelized onions will give you that, background sweet flavor. So use a lot of mushrooms. Combine about a half cup of wine with about a fourth cup of violet jelly. So that's 2 parts wine to 1 part jelly. So it's going to be much more acidic than it would be if it was just straight jelly, and more tannic. Add some chicken, beef, or game stock along with the cooked alliums and mushrooms. You can also add any herbs you like. I think a few sprigs of fresh mint or parsley, of course. I put parsley in just about everything. Marjoram, savory, oregano, etc. They would all work well. I just had a pinch of, just pinch off a bit of whatever's convenient, whatever herbs smell good and you think would work, and just put them in. Let it simmer and reduce by about half. You're going to turn this into almost like a syrup. A reduction sauce is what it's called, before adding the salt and pepper to taste. If you add the salt in the beginning, it's going to be way too salty by the time it's reduced. So taste it. Should be mildly sweet, very mild, very aromatic, just a little fruity, but balanced with the acidity and the tannins of the wine. It's really good for fattier meats or those that have sort of a gamey flavor. Like if you did cook a raccoon, this would be really good with raccoon, actually. Feel free to add or leave out anything you like, because, just it's up to you. I know of at least one Native American chef who uses a berry jam similarly, with the addition of roasted hot peppers, and makes a barbecue sauce for smoked elk and buffalo and such as that. So you can really tailor it to your like. The violet's very European. I think he uses blackberry, and apparently that's sort of a Native American thing. And either way, it's going to be fantastic. All right, so moving on to the medicinal shrubs. This is Cunila, and there's only one variety of Cunila that's native to my region, and it's often called stone mint, American dittany, or wild oregano. So it has this oregano-like flavor. Plants for a future list is stone mint. And this is actually shrub, though. It's not like a little plant like you would think of as mint. It says medicinal use of stone mint. An essential oil known as Cunila oil is obtained from the plant. It is antiseptic, aromatic, and stimulant. A tea made from the leaves is used to treat headaches, colds, and fevers, and it is believed to induce menstruation and perspiration. Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests says the infusion forms a pleasant and refreshing drink. It is diaphoretic, means it will help break a fever, and is employed in fevers and colds. A gentleman in the Spartanburg district of South Carolina tells me that in his day, everybody cured everything with dittany. Doubtless they took less mercury and less drastic purgatives as consequence. This is 1860s. Yes, people did actually use mercury medicinally. We don't do that anymore. But yeah, dittany would certainly be a whole lot safer. Still used in 1898, King's American Dispensatory says dittany is found growing in dry hills and woods on rocks in nearly all parts of the United States. Flowering from June to October, this herb is very fragrant with a warm, spicy taste. Its taste and odor are due to a volatile oil which may be procured by distillation. Mr. P. Millman found the herb to contain a warm, pungent, delicately fragrant volatile oil, tannic acid, a trace of glucose, a gummy matter, and considerable extractive matter, a part of which was bitter and acid, and of dark green resin. The ashes give salts of potassium, calcium, magnesium, and iron. Under actions of medicinal uses, they said it was stimulant, carminative, antispasmodic, diaphoretic, used in warm infusions to promote perspiration, to relieve flatulency, and as an emmenagogue. It means brings on menses, as we said. Popularly employed for colds, headache, fevers, and also to relieve nervous headaches and hysterical disorders. Also colic, indigestion, and nervous affections. Volatile oil possesses all the medicinal properties of the herb. Related species, there's a bastard dittany, a white frexinella. This said was also useful for epilepsy, hysteria, amenorrhea, and intermittent fevers. And finally, Peterson Field Guide for Central and Eastern Medicinal Plants says simply a leaf tea is a folk remedy for headaches, snake bites, and thought to induce perspiration and menstruation. And we're going to wrap it up with Scotch Broom. Now, this is an interesting one. This kind of falls into that category of like the Gelsemium. Don't try this one at home. But it does have some interesting properties. And Scotch Broom is naturalized in my region, but generally considered to be a noxious weed. Put that in quotes. Most noxious weeds, so-called, are quite useful. Like kudzu, it was used by the government to help control erosion. It got out of hand. It's a very interesting plant, though, and has some unique uses in herbal medicine. It has a long history. Dioscorides described the plant and said the leaves are cooling, dissolving new edemas, pounded into small pieces and smeared on with bread. So that's used topically, basically like a poultice. I don't know why you had to use bread to put it on, but they had a lot of bread on hand. They had a lot of stale bread back then. A decoction of them taken as a drink induces urine. Some plant it near beehives to attract the bees. Let's see. 1500s England, Gerard said, the decoction of the roots made in wine and drunken provoketh the urine, breaketh the stone, driveth forth gravel and sand, and easeth those that make water with great pain. So very good diuretic, good for the urinary tract. He quotes Dioscorides. More modern use, Jethro Kloss, writing I guess about the 1920s, said, excellent for dropsy, that's retaining fluid, so the diuretic property. Good for toothache, ague, gout, sciatica. Agues are fevers, by the way. Swelling of the spleen, jaundice, kidney, and bladder troubles, especially in case of gravel in the bladder. Makes an excellent remedy when used with uva ursi, cleavers, and dandelion for cleansing the kidney and bladder, and to increase the flow of urine. The broom is of great service in dropsy caused by a weak heart. Makes a good ointment for lice or vermin. Contains 42 parts potash. The stomach readily receives the nutritive salts found in the plant since they are natural. Caution though, broom contains alkaloids and hydrotoxyramine, which should not be used except under proper supervision. This is a slightly toxic plant. Remember that. Botany A Day says that it contains the alkaloid spartine, which slows the heart and stimulates uterine contraction. So it can be slowing the heart rate is usually a good thing, but not always. Obviously, you don't want to take it too far, and obviously should never be used by pregnant women. Plants for a Future says medicinal uses of broom. Broom is a bitter narcotic herb. Remember that, bitter and narcotic, much like the gelsemium I talked about. In this case, narcotic means slows the heart rate and respiration. However, some people use it for that effect, and I'm not sure if I have notes on this in front of me. I may have to do it from memory. Yes, I will have to do it from memory. Okay, so bitter and narcotic herb, and I just lost my place. That depresses the respiration and regulates heart action. It acts upon the electrical conductivity of the heart, slowing and regulating the transmission of the impulses. The young herbaceous tips of the flowering shoots are cardiotonic, cathartic, diuretic, emetic, and vasoconstrictor. The seeds can also be used. The plant is used internally in the treatment of heart complaints and is especially used in conjunction with Convallaria majalis. The plant is a strongly diuretic, stimulating urine production and countering fluid retention. Since broom causes the muscles of the uterus to contract, it has been used to prevent blood loss after childbirth. Use this herb with caution since large doses are likely to upset the stomach. The concentration of active ingredients in this plant is very changeable. This makes it rather unreliable medicinally and is therefore rarely used. In other words, one plant may be stronger than another depending on where it grows. This herb should not be prescribed to pregnant women or patients with high blood pressure because vasoconstrictor would aggravate high blood pressure. Any treatment with this plant should only be carried out under expert supervision. Young herbaceous tips from flowering shoots are harvested in spring, generally in May. They can be used fresh or dried. They should not be stored for more than 12 months since the medicinally active ingredients break down. PDR, Physician's Desk Reference for Herbal Medicine, says only the herb is used for functional heart and circulatory disorders. Now, one of the herbalists used to work with Michael Moore. His name was Howie. Howie's last name is not coming to me right this minute. He was very big on finding novel uses for medicinal herbs that would make you high. He did come up with a way of fermenting Scotch broom and then smoking it. I don't have that information at hand. I probably wouldn't share it with you if I did. The reason being, it's very dangerous, and he said that it would make you very high. but was also incredibly hard on the body and would give you severe headaches. It had a strong toxicity, and even he didn't recommend it. So, as I said, this is one of those don't try it at home type plants. But as you can see, Scotch Broom does have some really good applications as a diuretic. Kidney and bladder stones, good one to learn to identify and to use, to really study. And if you're going to use it with caution in small amounts when you need to. So y'all, I hope this has been informative and instructive. This is the kind of information you're not going to get from most herbalists. Let's just put it that way. I do a lot of experimentation. I do a lot of research, which allows me to do experimentation with herbs responsibly. I don't encourage you to do the same, but I do encourage you to learn from my experiences. Howie Brownstein, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you can look him up. Really good herbalist. I think Howie's still around. Michael Moore died several years ago. I think Howie is still around. But anyway, pretty sure it's Brownstein, something with a Steen. Anyway, if you want to check that out. But have a great week. Have a very happy Easter. Got a new tune up. I'm doing weekly tunes, old Piedmont blues stuff. I did one of Mississippi John Hurt's gospel tunes called Since I Laid My Burden Down for today. And I hope it'll bring you a smile on this Easter Sunday or Monday or whenever you happen to hear this. And I hope you do enjoy it. Have a good one. I'll talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, for your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.